What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Matty Shannon White here with another episode of the Steelers Global Perspective. We are talking wide receivers after our abrupt end to our previous show on the secondary and cornerback position. Shannon, let's just rip straight into it. You want to talk about wide receivers, OTAs? We've heard a lot of different things. Just have at it. Just go for it.
Well, we talked last week about a Michael Thomas or somebody of that nature to have a bigger body guy to, in case something was to happen to Pickens and him, he misses sometimes. But out of OTAs, they're like today, they said Russell Wilson hit a deep ball to Quez
Justin
Watkins.
Fields? He had a deep ball to Justin Fields. No, I'm just
he hit Quez Watkins with a deep ball, and that got everybody excited because the Steelers got a lot more speed now.
Well, he also talked about Quez Watkins on the day one press conference. He kept going and how the amount of off-season work he'd done in San Diego. I think he said San Diego with Quez Watkins.
But the guy that surprised everybody is they said that Calvin Austin III is taking a big step forward. Now, he missed his whole rookie year with that foot.
Can I say one thing? And I don't mean to be short jokes. But how big a step is it for Calvin Austin versus other people?
Well, I mean, yeah, he's not big. He's not big.
Maybe we should say it's a big stride for Calvin Austin.
But he can fly now.
No, he can. I'm not disputing. The guys are I think the guy's a weapon.
Yeah. Well, we didn't get to see it in the vanilla grade school offense they were running last year with Canada. But when DJ was out, Calvin Austin III was the guy taking his snaps on the outside. And they said that he's really taking a step forward, looks much more comfortable, and, even more explosive because he's more assertive. He knows what he wants to do. He knows how to sell the route better, and he's standing out at camp. Man, the Steelers couldn't ask for any more than that because they've got 5 guys at least that can play and be utilized at that wide receiver 2 position. They have guys who can rotate in and out of the slot. So, again, I think that a cheap option, whether it be a trade or a one of the, like a Michael Thomas or somebody like that, to a guy that can help if Pickens does miss any time. I think the wide receiver position is in better hands than people realize.
Well, and I wanted to talk about that last week. I'm not trying to play, be anachronistic or anything like it, but I did talk a lot about acquiring it, and part of me is just give it a crack with what you've got. The other thing about the Steelers, they could go into the season with this wide receiver group because there is going to be a team out there, right, somewhere in the league that at the end of preseason or in the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks of the season is going to a major quarterback is going to go down. That's the data shows the last 10 years at least, a quarterback's going down, right?
Yeah.
It's, I'm surprised the betting markets don't actually pre-pick that, right?
Where you could, I mean?
Right? And that's going to ruin a team's fortune. And in a lot of those scenarios, that team is going to have a wide receiver that they're paying a hefty amount of money to, or a wide receiver that's coming off contract. So if the Steelers enter the first couple of weeks of the season, and look what they're playing away at Atlanta, where we've done pretty well in the stadium. Then they're going to Denver, when Marky D and I did the record prediction yesterday, as you and I are doing this pre-record, I said Denver is going to be that game. You got to run the ball. You want to win in Denver, you're running the ball. So the Steelers, and then they come at home to the Chargers, and we know what they play like in Pittsburgh. My point is, if it's not working through the first few weeks of the season or not working in the preseason, and there's going to be players that are going to be cut between now and week 1 of the season anyway, worst case, the Khan artist has to make a move and move a bit of draft capital around in the first few weeks of the season. But I'd rather know what we have in what we've invested draft picks with and know what's working. Plus, we've got a myriad of tight ends and people, hybrid guys like Con Haywood, and we've got a guy in Najee Harris and two guys in Najee Harris and Jalen Warren that I've said for ages, particularly around Najee Harris, he should be used in the short passing game a lot more. So I'm
Use
not.
them hands. Yep.
I'm actually not deeply worried if they don't add anyone, but it's not look. It's not if I release that video every week instead of every wide receiver video every week, it might not be that interesting for people, right? Like everyone wants to play armchair GM, but I'm comfortable if the Steelers feel comfortable, if the quarterbacks feel comfortable, if Arthur Smith feels comfortable, despite some of those players and the coaches' trials and tribulations over the last few years, then if they're all comfortable and they're all happy, they've all played NFL football, pretty much all the players except for this rookie class. And Arthur Smith's coached at 3 or 4 different teams, at this point in time. And Mike Tomlin's not going to go put out there a wide receiver that can't do it. Well, let's just have a bit of faith and let it blossom. You know what I mean? Like, it's a bit like when we talked about secondary. I think we just got to give blokes a chance. Just give them a chance.
Well, there's a lot of talk right now. Pat Freiermuth, he's really taken to this offense. And he looks like a real weapon. And we've talked about this for a while. He could be seeing wide receiver 2 numbers. Not just tight end 1. He could be getting wide receiver 2. Because
you and I said a few weeks ago.
Yeah. I mean, they're not desperate for another wide receiver like a lot of people think they are.
Correct.
Because you've got 3 receivers they've talked about. 2 of them franchise tagged that they're not even close to signing. With a Cook with the Niners, T. Higgins with the Bengals, all these guys, there's going to be receivers. Boy, let's say the Niners, some people ain't thinking about. If the Niners sign a Cook, that's going to make where Jennings might be available.
I like
Jennings. And if
Jennings.
you remember, I like Jennings, and I wanted the Steelers, before the Niners signed him, I wanted the Steelers to try to get him.
Well, but the other thing, too, is like,
he might be available. I was
going to say, because you and I, when we talked about Roman Wilson being a bit like a Doug Baldwin, and I went and had a look at the Seahawks stats. People like Jimmy Graham at 29, 30, and 31 caught 2,000 yards across those 3 seasons, 605, 923, 520. Between 29 and 31 with the Russell Wilson playing for Seattle, and caught an average of, I think it was 64, 68, 59. So let's call it 63, 64%, right? So 64% actually when you do it right. Literally. So an average of 64% of balls, 2,000 yards, and he had what's that? 100 and quick math. He had 170 receptions off about 250 targets. So not too bad, right?
Yeah.
But Freiermuth could easily be seeing numbers higher than that. He could easily see.
Oh, yeah.
If Jimmy Graham can get 90 targets in that Seattle offense with those wide receivers that they had, Pat Freiermuth can get 90. I mean, Pat Freiermuth has got to be available to get 90 targets.
Well, yeah, the health's the thing, yes. But the key to me is if this line gels like they need to, and early in the season, if they can start imposing their will with the ground game, everything's going to play off that in Arthur Smith's offense. That's what made them so effective in Tennessee, because they had to stack the box to stop Henry. And then Tannehill, Tannehill he wasn't no superstar.
No.
But he was throwing the wide open guys because, they had great favorable matchups. And that's what and there's so many weapons. Like I said, if Calvin Austin, if they know how to use him, which Canada said he had no clue, and I agree, he was totally clueless. If Smith could get that ball to Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, as you say, Najee or Jalen in space, hey, they're gonna feast.
Yeah.
It's all about matchups. The NFL now is all matchups.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I was listening to Bucky Brooks and Damon Jeremiah yesterday, and they were talking about their favorite wide receiver groups. I actually haven't finished the podcast, but they were talking about Miami, and they brought up the question of like the track team that Miami's effectively built at wide receiver with, Waddle and Tyreek Hill and Odell Beckham Jr. And they were saying like Odell Beckham Jr. is actually a smart pick for them because he's going to destroy most third tier,
great
cornerbacks
matchup.
in the league. Like that's 6 or 7 TDs, like that. Lock that in. And they said, and they're going to pay Tua, and they've got Arcane, the running back, and he's incredibly speedy.
Yeah.
Like, and they were like, that's why they'll pay Tua. They're like, yes, Tua's not necessarily going to the greatest prototypical quarterback in the world. Absolutely not. But all he does to do is just flick. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, I know we want to see the mobility of Fields, and Russell Wilson can roll out and he can do things. But I was kind of sitting there going, I kind of feel like a bit like that's what it is with the Steelers. Like, yes, we've got the combat catcher in Pickens and Frymouth, but like Wilson and Austin and Scotty Miller. It's like what you say. It's like get the ball. And it's a big saying we have in rugby here called get the ball in space. You've got to get the ball in space, right? Like, because it's actually quite funny. I'm just as a tidbit of sidetrack is, in the NFL, we talk about throwing people open, right? But in rugby, you want to, like the union versus rugby league, we always talk about throwing the ball in front of the player so the player catches the ball at speed, right? It's basically the same thing, but it's different in the way the defense works. It's a sliding defense. And so when people talk about throwing open, as I've grown up watching more and more NFL, it's like I understand what that is because I know exactly what that is to do it, and not even to throw forward, to throw it and you can't throw the ball forward in rugby. It's got to go backwards, but you've got to throw so play hits at the speed. But getting the ball in space, and this was a big criticism I had with Najee Harris last year, is that sometimes I feel like Najee Harris doesn't run at holes. It perplexes me how you do not run at a hole. He runs into people, not holes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you need to run through holes, and then you can run into the people that you can steamroll. But running into people on the defensive line ain't a good idea, So, but you do get him the ball in space, like what we saw in his rookie year with Ben sometimes, even when it was behind the line of scrimmage, and he'll go. Like he will monster people. He will put people in the dirt, and I like it.
We talked a little bit earlier this offseason about throwing somebody open is a lot about progression and anticipation by the quarterback.
Yeah.
Some quarterbacks can do that, but it's hard. A lot of them can't. But you can scheme guys open.
Correct.
The Niners are great at scheming guys open.
And this was the problem with Pickett. That was the problem in Canada's that was the biggest problem to me in Canada's offense. Pickett is not someone that could throw too many guys open. He at depth.
Yeah,
right? He could throw guys open in the intermediate to short area of the field, and that's when people said, "Well, he doesn't have an arm." The guy can throw the football. The guy has good velocity on the football, right? But he couldn't throw guys open deep. He didn't have that type of an arm.
Well, did you hear what?
Never put anyone in space.
Yeah, did you hear what Pickett said? He said that his biggest frustration last year. That he was held back by the quarterback play. And so, the Steelers made the right decision this offseason.
Yeah.
Revamping that room because it was going to get ugly. Because, we're hearing people say things now that they were not saying last year because you don't want to say that.
Yeah.
But Pickens says, I was held back by the quarterback play, and he's very excited. And it encouraged him to work with the route god and to put it on this work in the offseason to be a more complete receiver because he knows this is a huge year for him. So I'm excited to see that if they have that ability this year to scheme these guys open due to the matchups is like we're talking about. And I believe they're going to have the leadership and the confidence in that quarterback position, starting out with Russell Wilson, to achieve that. It just has to be a really solid game manager who can make big plays when they're there.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, that's what Ben did his rookie year. I mean, if you watch, he was an effective game manager, but with the opportunity for the big play, he didn't miss. And that's what they need this year. And I think that they have the ability, they have the talent there to achieve that.
Exactly it. And they were saying, again, this is about 3 weeks ago, Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks were talking about Justin Herbert. And they were saying that everyone thinks that, and it's important because obviously the Steelers are playing the Chargers in week 3, but they were saying the Chargers. Like, people think that Herbert's going to be throwing the football around the yard. They're going to be running the ball. This is going to be Michigan. This is going to be very similar to what Harbaugh did in Michigan, because it's what he's done elsewhere when he's coached in the NFL. But they said what they want is not their elite quarterback playing elite 80% of the time, right? And then 20% having to make throws, but he can't do it because he's carried the team. Like, that's what they said. They said they want their elite quarterback to not have to carry the team 80% of the time, but when he's got to carry the team 20% of the time, he's ready to go. That's all we need from the Steelers, and that's all we need, whether it's Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. We need to try and make that like 90% if we can. Like, only 10% of the time they've got to do that, which should be the case because we've got two starting caliber running backs and the type of offense we've got versus the type of offense that the Chargers. We're not here to talk about the Chargers, but my point being is they do not need a quarterback. They don't need an Aaron Rodgers. That's not what this offense. And even then, the Jets are going to rely on Breece Hall. Like, we don't need a Josh Allen. That's not what this team needs. This team needs
definitely not.
A game manager that can hit a couple of big throws, like we saw Calvin Austin. I was saying to Mark when the schedule show, saw Calvin Austin go for 72 yards against the Raiders. I want to see that more this year. Right? Even if it only happens 1 out of every 5 throws to him goes for that deep, well, still, heck, 70 yards, I'll take that any day.
Oh, yeah. You utilize the skill sets that they have. They have not been able to efficiently do that. And I think that's going to change because you actually have a NFL caliber offensive coordinator now.
That's it. Well, with that, that's going to wrap up our wide receiver segment of this week's Steelers Global Perspective. Let us know in the comments what you think about some of those names, about the Steelers need a game manager, or do they need someone that's going to go out there and be an MVP caliber player. Let us know. We've all got a right to an opinion. I'm Matty P with Shannon White. As always, go Steelers.